Welcome ladies and gentlemen, my name's Chronic, your host here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the very best hunter exotics in Destiny 2. And of course, as always, this is completely subjective based on my own opinion, and if you have a different opinion, let me know in the comments down below. It's possible there's something I have overlooked, but you gotta of course tell me why. You can't just tell me what you like, you gotta tell me why and compare it to the other ones. Big shout out to my buddy Zoomzy for helping me get the PvP gameplay that you'll see in this video. Link to his Twitch in the description down below. Along the way, you'll be seeing some beautiful and amazing and fully public spreadsheets for you guys to use. All you have to do is head over to my Discord server, link in the description down below. And in this Discord server, don't get distracted by the hashtag cute animals or the hashtag questions for questions. You'll find a channel called hashtag spreadsheets docs. If you ask me where the spreadsheets or the docs are in general, I will angrily emote at you and shake my fist angrily that you can't see. Yeah, I told him, that's right. And as always, if you like what I'm doing here on YouTube with the spreadsheets, my videos, or Twitch, or Discord, or Twitter, or whatever I do, please consider checking out my Patreon. I'm actually at the point of break even where I'm making $800 a month and spending $800 a month as well. So please check it out. Even if it's $5 a month, I would really appreciate it. And you get some kind of mediocre bonuses too. Yeah. That's flexing right there. I wonder if I incentivize people with the shirtless flex pictures if they would pledge more. Hey man, the Twitch people love it, so I don't know. Moving on to the main section of this video, we're going to be taking a deep look into the numbers, taking a look at my spreadsheets. If you've never seen my spreadsheets before, this is what they look like. Dark theme, pictured out, lots of fun numbers for PvE, PvP, my rankings, all my notes, my recommendations for the mods on this armor and other armors with it. Lots of really great stuff, and in case you're wondering about all of the different letters and acronyms, they are all listed here on the right side, as well as general notes, lots of fun stuff and sources, all of that along the way. As always, when it comes to these exotic armors, what I'm going to do is work my way through the non-ranked items first, talking very briefly about why they're not part of the meta, what they're used for, and why they are or aren't effective, and then working my way backward through the top 10. First up, we have the Assassin's Cowl. I believe it did get changed to include the charge melees in PvE, which made it so you can get your invisibility more frequently. However, there are a lot better options, including dodging for invisibility, Graviton forfeit to have more invisibility, and just in general, going for that melee is a dangerous thing, so past medium PvE, not that useful. The Foes Tracers, in my opinion, one of the most underrated exotics in the game, especially for PvP. Basically, if you look at an enemy for like half a second, they get one of those hit markers on them that does keep tracking after they go behind cover for a few seconds. This will allow you to tell whether people are going to re-peek, where they're going to be re-peeking from, if they're running away, and it's something kind of like the one-eyed mask that nobody really talks about. The biggest issue is that it tells you where an enemy is that you already know about, whereas one-eyed mask told you about an enemy that you may not know about for a longer period of time. Knucklehead Radar. You can see your radar while aiming down sights, usually useful for defensive play if you like to aim down sights lots. This can help you, but there are other exotics that are better. The Aeon Swift, a bunch of different bonuses to your teammates. If they have Aeon, they also get bonuses, but these bonuses aren't really that strong, and nobody uses it, so nobody uses it. Flyer's Handshake improves your melee damage by a pretty significant amount, has been nerfed or at least fixed many different times because it used to be overpowered as well as all the other melee exotics, so it's not really something that goes past the medium level PvE. And in PvP, you're not really going to proc it that often. However, it is a lot of fun in different builds. Mechaneer's Trick Sleeve, all about sidearms, especially with that new perk this season, the seasonal mod to increase the sidearm damage. With Devil's Ruin, you can get some pretty impressive damage, but you do also have to be critically wounded, which makes it very inconsistent and dangerous. And honestly, I'd rather just use a special weapon. Seems like a lot of effort to just do special ammo damage. The Oathkeepers, it's about bows, and bows are really not strong. And the perk for it, being able to hold the charge indefinitely, is also not strong. The only benefit this really has is with Low Monarch, allowing you to hold the poison part for a longer period of time. Sealed Omkar's Grasp, basically Grave Robber in an exotic. If you have slow firing weapons, it can be useful, but again, when it comes to melee is not an endgame thing. Young Caras Spine, all about improving your trip mine grenades and getting trip mine grenades back quicker. Definitely a lot of fun, however, not the most important thing to have in your arsenal. So just like an averaging exotic. The Gwynns Invest used to be one of the better items in the game because the super was incredibly good. Still a very good super these days. However, the vest itself only really gets you an extra 2 kills a match if you survive with it, and that's not really that much. The Orpheus Spade gives you an extra knife charge. Outside of solar plexus, this really, in my opinion, has no place, and extra knife charge is not really something that I desire. And even with solar plexus, why not just have one knife? If you keep getting headshots, you keep getting it back. Reigis Harness, definitely a very good exotic in my opinion for PvP. Firstly, guarding costs a lot less energy, which is something very powerful. If you've seen my Sentinel builds in the past, being able to block damage is very strong, and the fact this costs less energy is nice. And on top of that, you can cancel the super, deactivate it, kind of like the Warlock Laser, to be able to get some super energy back, which is really nice in Trials of Osiris because it's round based. You only need your super for a certain amount of time, and ending it early means you can have it more often. The 6 Coyote, you get an extra dodge charge. In PvP, this is something that can be useful. The ability to be able to dodge twice in an engagement is something that makes enemies lose target, but really the biggest thing I'd rather have a second dodge for is when I use Worm Husk, which you cannot use with another exotic. The Frosties got a weird nerf this season to make it so it's not multiplicative anymore, and the bonus to it is more like 1 to 5%, so it's really not that great. It's a very universal basic exotic, so it cannot really give you that much bonus. Gemini Jester in PvE actually disorients all enemies around you, making it a very good PvE survival option. And in PvP, it encourages your enemies to just sit with their butt in a corner and wait for their raider to come back, which is not how you want your enemy to play. For the Lucky Pants, the biggest bonus to it is the fact that you switched your hand cannons very quickly and you're more accurate after swapping to them, with things like the Last Word that swap a little slow because they have that spinny animation and suffer from having to use blind fire. This can be something of good use, but these days so many different people have quick draw on so many different weapons, it's not really that common. The Bumba Deers, one of the more fun exotics to say, the Bumba Deers. Leaves an explosion after dodging, does a decent amount of damage, but is a pretty long delay, meaning that most people just walk away from it. And on top of that, if you're depending on that to get a kill, oftentimes you're going to be trading, and trading is not always the best thing. Moving on to the honorable mentions, we have Khepri Stinking, an exotic that I thought was going to be in the top 10, but after analysis, I realized that it is more of a very high skill ceiling exotic. Now, the first part of this exotic, punching somebody with full melee energy will cast a smoke bomb, is not really what you're looking for. What you want from this exotic is gaining true sight while in your own smoke bomb effect, which you can just throw down your regular smoke bomb, which allows you to see the full silhouette of any enemy through walls at any distance. And if you have a very high strength build, every like 20 or 30 seconds, you can throw down a smoke bomb and then be able to see enemies through walls, which is extremely powerful. Basically a one-eyed mask, but even better, because it's more than a hit marker, it's a full silhouette. However, it does take a lot of time to get used to and has a higher skill ceiling. And I believe it's also banned in competitive play, so this may be something you need to try out. And your smoke bombs do 150% damage, which was an update that they made this season, and that's really powerful. Smoke bombs are very commonly used in PvP. Moving on to the top 10, starting up at number 10, we have the Graviton Forfeit. Now, this is an exotic that I overlooked for a very long time, as it increases the duration of any invisibility effects, basically doubling the time you're in invisibility, and your melee recharges faster while you're invisible. In PvP, having more smoke bombs is something that's very strong. As I mentioned before, they're pretty commonly used to disorient people and do damage, and invisibility is always very useful to have as well. And in PvE, the ability to last longer invisible is very useful for cheesing different events. For example, on the Pit of Heresy in the third encounter, the one where you have to stand on the plate, get the balls, and then dunk the balls, having invisibility basically the entire time very easily with the Rat King is very powerful and can be used to cheese a lot of different things. And when you need to revive your teammates, invisibility is very strong as well. Definitely an underrated exotic for sure. Up next at number 9, we have the Lucky Raspberry, an exotic that gets very rarely used, but is actually really strong. Increasing the chaining capabilities of arc bolt grenades, which are already really strong in PvP, and has a chance to recharge it each time it deals damage. And the more people that you chain that damage to, increases the chance that it will instantly charge. And a full chain will be a 100% chance, which I believe a full chain is 3 or 4 enemies chain hit with the arc bolt, which is not really that uncommon, making it very possible and feasible to use in PvE as well. At number 8, for a pretty similar reason as the Lucky Raspberry, it's basically the Skip Grenade version. You have improved Skip Grenade, meaning it sends out more of those twiddly bits, you gain an extra Skip Grenade charge, and Skip Grenades return a certain amount of energy when it damages enemies. And the more times you hit enemies, the more it recharges. So similar to the previous one, Lucky Raspberry, however, a slightly different version. And the bigger bonus of Shinobu's Vow over Lucky Raspberry is that Skip Grenades do more damage, and they're more likely to get you kills than the Arc Bolt. And they also have really good tracking. I'm honestly surprised how infrequently I see Skip Grenades for people. They're really good. Moving on to number 7, we have the Shards of Gallon. Probably an exotic that you did not think is going to be on this list. However, this exotic itself and its perks and the feasibility of Blade Barrage are still things that are quite strong. This season they made some changes to it to make it so the initial impact did more damage than the explosions did, but overall it functions very similarly. Now this exotic allows any hit or kills with the Blade Barrage to return a certain amount of super energy. So in a match where usually people get 2 supers, the ability to get 3 or more supers is going to be really strong. And generally you want to use this for anti-super, which is really easy to kill an enemy super and also really easy to kill lots of enemies. It's just a good super, a good exotic, maybe not the best exotic anymore, but it's just really strong. And if you ever use this in Mayhem, you almost always just get your entire super back like 1 second after using it. And in PvE, it does a lot of damage. Moving on to number 6, we have the Dragon Shadow, an exotic that I overlooked for quite some time because I thought it was just improved speed, but ever since I started using Quick Drop more and more frequently, I've seen the value of this exotic. Firstly, dodging reloads all your weapons, not really that important, but convenient. It also increases both your movement and weapon handling speed for a brief period of time. Now what this does specifically is it makes it so you can swap weapons and ready weapons incredibly fast, way faster than even Quick Draw, which is the maximum speed of handling. So if you like to switch your weapons back and forth near instantly, you're gonna like this exotic. And on top of that, that bonus after dodging lasts around 10 seconds. So you only really need an 8 mobility to have this full Wraith Metal Mail bonus at all times. And honestly, when you get to use this thing, you are a very speedy boy. Hashtag rest in peace, powerful friends, my speedy Titan boy. Moving on to number 5, in this top 10 list, we have the Worm Husk Crown. Pretty much my number 1 favorite PvP exotic, as I'm more of a defensive player. This is more of a defensive exotic. The ability to get back half of your health just by dodging back behind cover, allowing you to re-engage with enemies to surprise them with your higher amount of health, or the ability to escape with more health if they continue to shoot you. And on top of that, it is a very underrated PvE exotic. If you find that you die a lot in raids or higher level activities, having the ability to just dodge out of the fray, get some health back is something that a lot of people need to use more often because dying can impact your team quite a lot. So seriously, if you find that you die a lot, it's not the best, but it can help you survive more. Coming up at number 4 in this top 10 countdown, we have the Influx exotic, an exotic that I've been toting literally since the beginning of the game as one of the best exotics in the game. Its main perk allows your arc staff to last longer and increase damage on successive hits. And the last time I tested this, I could get 26 light attacks if I was hitting the boss the entire time, which is a pretty high amount of damage output even for boss damage, but more so this is really good for ad slaying. So if there's a lot of ads like Menagerie or raids where you need 6 people, this is going to be very helpful. And on top of that, I also like it for Master and Grandmaster Nightfalls, where killing ads is going to be the biggest part of a job. And honestly, a very underrated part of doing these Grandmaster Nightfalls. Everybody goes for the bubbles, the tethers, the wells, but the things like Doomfang Pauldrons or Raid Influx are underrated and can be used quite effectively in those modes. Coming up at number 3 in this top 10 countdown, we have the Orpheus Rigs. Now this exotic has been also really good since the game came out. Now as far as its main perk goes, I specifically like the version that helps Way of the Trapper, the big tether that gives you super energy back. However, I also will say Way of the Pathfinder Mobius Quiver is as good as it's ever been, which also helps with that as well. Now what makes this so very important is firstly, it weakens enemies. So any enemy in the tether allows you to weaken all those enemies so they take more damage, which is very important for taking down different champions, lots of different enemies, boss damage, and it's a very large tether, allowing you to tether many enemies and deal damage to all of them. Now this exotic has been nerfed many times. Firstly, it only does 50% of the damage you deal to one target to the other tethered targets. Secondly, 50% is the maximum amount of super energy you can get back from a single tether, which is not that significant because usually you're not going to get more than 50%. 50%, unless you're playing like Reckoning with infinite spawns, and also you spawn orbs for your teammates, making it a very ideal and safe way to use in Grandmaster Nightfall. On top of the fact you can also dodge for invisibility in that same way of the Trapper, which is a very, very powerful subclass for, like I said, Grandmaster Nightfalls. And in Grandmaster Nightfalls, you're using your super pretty much all the time. No longer are the days that it takes less than 10 shots from a hand cannon to kill a Cabal. And the biggest benefit in PvP that this has is the ability to increase the amount of Mobius Quiver shots, which is important because they did get another buff this season to make that super last longer. Coming up at number 2 in this top 10 countdown, we have the exotic boots known as Stomp Ease. Probably the #1 best PvP exotic in the game, and definitely the #1 best PvP exotic for hunters. Now this one was very close to taking the Celestial Nighthawk's position at number 1. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So on paper, this doesn't seem like it would be this crazy good exotic. Increasing your sprint speed, slide distance, and improving the violent speed and height of all of your jumps basically just makes you a very fast, speedy boy, which is a powerful thing to have in the Crucible. Definitely the second most important stat after recovery is going to be mobility for that reason, and being able to increase it by even more is powerful. But what makes this so very amazing is just how fast and violent your high jump can get with this exotic. So the general scenario is you want to run up onto the enemies very closely, use your high jump in close proximity, forcing them to look straight up at you, having to take that amount of time to reacquire you. You're up in the air, which is a very good place to be. Even if your enemies kill you while you're up in the air, they then have to reacquire your teammates, which are going to be on ground level, which takes a lot longer than if you were at ground level. So when Shaq says that the hunters blaze a path for the rest of us, this is what he means. Getting up in people's faces, flanking, making them look straight up in the air, confusing them, and having your teammates just hit them from the side. And as a final note, in PvE, this is actually very commonly used for in jump puzzles or getting up to high areas, or if you just want to run faster, get through a strike faster, it's useful. And finally, coming up at number 1, the very best hunter exotic in the entire game, in my opinion, is going to be the Celestial Nighthawk. Now, technically, this is specifically for PvE. However, for PvE, it is more extensively the best option as compared to the Stomp Ease. Now, honestly, you could use a Nighthawk in pretty much everything. Doing 6 times the damage with a single golden gun shot is not only really fast, it's really high damaging, and it's also really easy. And when it comes to damage, I've actually recorded this in my PvE heavy spreadsheet. It does around 55,000 damage per second. Now, I know a lot of people ask, what do you mean by the DPS of Celestial Nighthawk? It's instant. I actually calculated around 3.7 seconds to the point where you activate the super, aim the super, get that shot off, and then the next time you can use your weapon, the very moment you can use your weapon after that, that takes around 3.7 seconds. So if you keep that in consideration, if you pop the super early before you can actually do DPS to a boss, you can get closer to around 100,000 DPS with this weapon, or specifically the super. So even though people are going absolutely bonkers over swords these days, it is almost like 3 times as much damage as that. And that is why Celestial Nighthawk is so powerful. That is why every raid has at least 1 Bubble Titan, 1 Well Warlock, and the rest of them can be hunters. That's why literally half of people's damage in raids are usually going to be Celestial Nighthawk. And when it comes to Grandmaster Nightfalls, even though you'd probably rather use Orpheus Rigs, Celestial Nighthawk can one-shot to the head any one of the champions. That's pretty insanely powerful, and you get a third of your super back for getting a kill with it. That's strong. But yeah, that's going to be pretty much the end of the video. I believe the next top 10 is going to be PvE primaries, so stay tuned for that. I know a lot of people like the PvE primaries video, and especially with sunsetting coming very soon, it is going to be important to know what to get. But yeah, my name is Chronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.